So, it's always wonderful. I've been sitting here listening to all the sessions, and honestly, for all the people leaving now because they only want to hear about AI, they're really missing out because I'm going to be talking about money and decision-making and data and marketing, all the funky stuff that makes life worth living, right? AI is fun and super, but hell, it doesn't pay any payrolls yet, right? It's just an investment. So what I'm going to be talking about today is, it's a lot about decision-making, but it's going to be built into a story about changes in Google Analytics. As an example, it's going to be looking at the market in relation to where changes are happening. So I'm crossing my fingers that I can keep you more than damn entertained with this, because this is good stuff. So for years and years and years, we've had this principle in data that it has been about gathering all the data, and you probably have been involved in this as well, saying, if we gather all the data, then we can make any decision. And that goes across all the organization and all the stuff we set up and all the stuff we do. So we've been on a massive mission in gathering more and more data. But the problem has been that this data has not necessarily been activated the way it's supposed to. So if you come from organizations, you're probably in a situation where you have an infrastructure of gathering data. But the data should actually be perceived like raw goods. Because one of the things that we fail to see, and this goes especially in this time and age, is that data has a half-life, right? We have been looking at data as like oil, an infinite resource we can just gather, and it will have value all over time, and it will just be valuable whenever. But the problem is that data, and especially different data points, will lose their value, right? Sure, I know you're at How to Web now, and if I'm going to target you, I would have to target that. And I might, but the value of you being here in 3 weeks is massively reduced. So that data point loses its value over time. So if having that understanding, that people are in a market for a product, all these different data points that we gather lose their value. The challenge is that because we had this process about we have to gather all the data, emphasis in most organizations today is actually more on data gathering than on using it. So if you go into this magnificent kitchen of data goods, the challenge is that here you'll see that the products are not really being used, right? The kitchen is empty, not a lot of people go in there. Somebody might say, order a report with something, but that will basically just tell you how much meat is in the kitchen. And it's not really about activation, it's simply about having the products there. And sure, some of the data has a longer life value, but in the bigger picture, the challenge is that we need to have this data activated. So, one of my clients came to me and said, Steen, Anna is the CMO of a mid-size organization in Sweden. They sell fast-moving consumer goods. And she's like, Steen, due to the market, I've lost 5 people on my team. I want to be data-driven, but I cannot use the data. So we started talking, and I said, well, Anna, I can build you a dashboard. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. That's old school. I don't have time to look at a dashboard. I said, Anna, I can give you a LLM so you can just ask it the question. And she's like, yeah, but my day is I come in at 8 o'clock, I leave at 6, and between 8:30 and 5:30, it's back-to-back meetings. So I don't have time to look at the data. So I said, okay, let's see what we can do and how we can change the perception to actually change the focus on this. Because the one thing that Anna has to do all the time, and this goes for all of us, and this is not just a marketing thing, we are all hired to make decisions or enable other people to make decisions. That's kind of the key things. A lot of the products we sell, no matter what they are about decisions. The problem is that if we try to gather all the data and then so we can make any decision, means that we're gathering way too much data and there's too little emphasis on the decision. So we need to reverse that thinking, and we need to actually go in and talk to people around us and saying, what if we put in a decision-first approach to the data that we're gathering? Saying, okay, you're responsible for the website. What data do you need to make decisions about the website? And then I would get some specific data points in relation to this person's specific job that would make this job easier. So flipping the thinking from being data first, where they have to come up with the questions, to a situation where we together go in and discuss what data is required to make the decision. And suddenly, we get a situation where the data is focused on the decision-making and not just on the data, right? And we can kind of go in and have the reflection, so helping people make better and faster decisions. Because one of the things that I observed over the last, 2 years, is that I feel there's been a massive slowdown in decision-making. So you probably have experienced then, when I've been out talking to customers about buying my product or buying products, the sales process is taking a lot longer, right? And one of the observations in this context has been like, Jeff Bezos has this wonderful idea talking about one-way and two-way doors, where a two-way door is a decision we cannot unmake. So if we first go through this door, then it's really complicated with selling a house or building a specific technology or making major changes, firing our CMO or hiring somebody. These are often one-way doors. Once we do it, we cannot change it, right? Two-way doors are the decisions that we can make and we can change. So that's should the button be red or green? Should we test something with marketing? And the idea is saying that with a two-way door, then we make the decision. Well, we make the decision and then we document it with data that it was the right decision. With a one-way door, we do the research first. But my perception right now of the market in a very general sense is that more and more things are being treated like one-way doors. So the decision process is slower. People spend much more time on making really trivial decisions. And in a field like what we're working in, where AI and new technology and changes are constantly happening, there's a massive chance of getting hit by what we call the cost of inaction. Right? That we're sitting, we decide not to do anything, and then we can justify it because something else happened 6 months later. But we're missing the opportunity that could have happened in those 6 months. So this is kind of going back to that and saying, whatever you need to make your decision faster is something that will enable the company to move faster and better now. So it's just not just about marketing, it's about data in general. And like I said with the goods, like we've heard the story about data being the new oil. Well, from my side, I would say data is the new ice cream, right? Because it's sure you can get a soft ice in your hand, and it's really delicious when you get it and you can use it for something. But the problem is that if you don't eat that soft ice while it's fresh and relevant, then it's just going to be a mess. Sure, you can put it in the freezer, but it's not going to be as delicious to eat, right? So data, because of the half-life, is something that we need to treat as a perishable resource that we need to activate while we have it. So not waiting and not aggregating and not building and compiling data so we once a year can make a big strategy process. It's about flipping the thinking on that and saying, okay, use it while it's fresh, because then is when it's most valuable. I've been traveling a lot with this one, my idea of the half-life of data, saying that the problem with our decision processes is that very often we're in a situation where you have this model, we gather an event at the top, then we wait until we have the data ready for analysis, then we analyze it, and then somebody has to make a decision about it, and then the decision is made. So the problem with this figure is that when is the data most valuable? The data is most valuable closest to the moment that we gather it. There might be a strategic value, but 99% of the data that we gather will be momentarily valuable and not long-term valuable, right? So having this approach of going in and considering saying, okay, how can we actually push this data faster to the market? So going back to Anna, why does Anna have analytics? And this is just saying what is the universe that she's moving in. Well, for Anna, has the responsibility for marketing and the website and the online activities. So when I said to her, you can have an LLM where we can put in all the data, you can ask it any questions, she was like, yeah, too slow, I don't have time, I cannot formulate the questions. So of course, then we said, next thing, we said, okay, what we can do is, we can put a Google Home on top. So when you come into the office, you can ask it. And she was, yeah, but I'm not really sure of what questions I want to ask it. Okay, but then we can put an AI on top of it. So when you come in, you say, good morning AI, and what happened yesterday, what do I need to know? Because the majority of the data is not really interesting, but then her assistant would verbally tell her saying, well, we're spending too much money on PPC, and this channel is going really well, and this market is a problem. And she was like, yeah, super fine, but I would still need to sit down with my computer and delegate based on this, right? So the final version was saying, okay, cool, so what about if you could use it actively to tie back and say, if you hear saying, okay, the PPC budget is not performing well, okay, send a message to Bob that he needs to check out the PPC budget and how it's executing in Finland. So actually tying all this in, so this is something he can do on the fly when she walks in. So instead of her data being something she sits down and has to look at as a graph or a chart or something Excel-y, where she has to click around, then the data gets articulated into problems and opportunities, right? So she can take the decision. There's this wonderful quote from IBM going back to, I think, 1968, that an AI entity should not be able to make the final decision because it cannot be held accountable. It sounds really banal, right? But there's this case with the Canada Air where their chatbot told people that they could get refunds on things they couldn't get refunds on. And Canada Air had to give them refunds because the AI was a representative of the company, so people would have no reason not to trust it. And similarly, I think news yesterday that the police somewhere in the US was really confused because they had a self-driving car making a U-turn. It's a place where it wasn't allowed. And there was nobody in the car, but who should have that fine? Should it be to the person who developed the self-driving engine for the car? Should it have been to the person owning the car? Who has that risk and mandate? So that's kind of the thing by having Anna in the loop like this, making sure that there's a person in the process who is accountable, because the accountability is critical. Now, I know what you're thinking, saying, Steen, this has all been wonderful, but what the heck does it have to do with data or marketing? Well, one of the things that has been happening behind the scenes that hasn't been pushed massively, right, is Google Analytics in relation to your tracking on the website. They have had data problems that they have fixed to make the data more solid. And then they have actually made a push in relation to enabling us to more actively being able to use the data. So for instance, one of the things is the project planner is a thing that has come where we can actually go in and say, hey, I'm going to run a campaign. I'm going to target these things. I'm going to go for lead gen. I'm going to go for, and I'm going to sell these products. And you enter the information in relation to what channels and activities you're doing. And while the campaign is running, it will project whether you're going to hit the target or not. So that's actually going in and building some sort of forecasting into it that is something new in relation to the data we have been normally have access to in our analytics, right? So this is kind of the thinking, and at the same time, Google is opening up for direct integrations to a lot of activities outside Google. TikTok, Pinterest, Reddit, hopefully Facebook one day as well. But so instead of us having to aggregate the data ourselves, it will all be aggregated into the same system. So this is kind of the change in relations to going in and working active with the data. The next layer is the budget planner tool where we can actually go in and on the longer basis, when we start the year saying, okay, this year my target will be doing these things, and based on your own site and your own traffic and your own activity, it will recommend a mix of channels and activities to deliver on those targets. So based on your own customers. So this is, again, in relation to, because what does this support? This supports decision making. But there's, of course, three things that blocks us from doing this just off the bat, right? So there's trust, data quality, and actionability, that it needs to be actionable. On the trust side, it's probably one of the biggest one, because Google is now enabling you to upload cost data and product cost data and cost of goods sold and all these core information in relation to the business so they can help you compile a single source of platform in relation to the marketing. So the big question here is saying, do you trust Google with that data? Right? So in some markets, I know there's a massive Google pushback that people do not trust Google with all these business informations, but we do see the first people who are trying it, they're getting a tactical advantage because they are getting the ability to act much faster on the data. So, this is a choice, ethical for you guys. Do we trust Google or not? Second thing, why is Google doing this? It's doing this because they have had a problem with a promise they made. So if you're running consent mode on your website in relation to getting Google to model the data for people who do not give consent, then Google said you would have the data the next day. But the one thing they have learned is that it's the biggest problem is doing modeling on marketing data, because marketing data sucks. We are so unpredictable in relation to what we do, right? What does it take to model anything? It takes some level of predictability. But suddenly we send out our newsletter on a Tuesday instead of the normal Thursday. We suddenly try a new channel. And Google has to figure this out as the data comes in to do predictions. And this is why we're seeing all the changes in the data right now. But this is not just a Google problem. It's just Google that has overpromised by promising us the data at once. So all this stuff about us giving them more data and marketing plans enables them to do better modeling and actually feeds back to getting us better data. So it's a good thing, right? But to do all of this, it requires that we trust the data that we have, right? And I've been talking about campaign tracking and marketing tracking for a long time. And I think over the years, I've been saying to people, okay, if you let me into your analytics platform, if I cannot find any errors, I will give you 1,000 euros. If I can find errors, if I can find an error, you have to give me 100 euro. Sound like a sweet deal, right? So I've probably given this offer to 5,000, 6,000 web analysts over the last 4 or 5 years. And how many people have accepted this offer? So how poor did I get? Or how rich did I get? Nothing, nobody. Nobody dared to take up the challenge because we all know that the data sucks to some extent. Now the problem is if we want to do this better, the worst data that most organizations have is sadly in the marketing stack or the campaign tracking and the marketing tracking. The overlying assumption is that it's good because we standardize it and we're just using Google's rule. But honestly, guys, if you dive deeper into your marketing data, you're going to get depressed because the decisions you're making, the data you're making decisions on now sucks. Yeah, one word, but cool. Okay. Now moving forward, because this has been a problem, this wonderful digital transformation matrix have we been talking about for years, right? You've all seen this. Now what we did in relation to this, we actually went in and we tried to do an audit in relation to our customers. And I think in a lot of ways here we're a symptom of this as well in relation to talking technology, because what we found when we did an audit of our customers was this, that every time we had a new problem, we tried to solve it with more technology. So the balance between people, processes, and technology is completely out of whack. right? Every time we have a problem, we're going to buy another piece of software. And so it's really a challenge in the sense that, sure, we have some people, but we're not getting more people to execute on the marketing side, even though we get more and more channels and more tools, right? And the training, because all the tools say they're basically plug and play out of the box and there's no learning curve and everybody can just use them, then there's really no real training either. So we have this mess of what we call the digital mutation. Way too much technology already. So the opportunity in this and what is required, this is of course where I have to say AI. So AI is, and we just saw it in relation to the agent, AI is probably the biggest opportunity we have now in relation to cleaning this up and tying our processes and tech together so we can actually get the full value out of it. So this, of course, means we have to take a step back and focus on getting our data AI ready. So that's the data quality, but the benefit is that if we actually start aligning in relation to the thinking that Google offers and going in and actually tracking things like they're supposed to do, then we have the quality we need. And does it work just giving people access to the data? Like hell it does. Nobody knows what to do with the data. It's like sending all of us we travel on a plane to China and we get into a Chinese kitchen that has been stocked by Chinese. There's no recipe. Somebody tells us, go cook. It's going to be a mess and it's going to be disgusting and we might be able to do some of the stuff that we do normally. But we need to learn the recipes. We need to have an understanding of what is happening and what is being cooked. But at the end, it's all about Anna. It's all about the decision making, right? We need to understand what data we have, or we need to circle back and put the decisions first that we're making so we can push forward from there. And with that, I have gone 2 seconds over time at least, so I thank you for your patience.